Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zach.
And I'm Errol Barnett with continuing coverage of this breaking news. Buffalo Bills Hall of Fame running back O.J. Simpson, who was acquitted of the 1994 slayings of his ex-wife and her friend, has died from cancer at the age of 76.
He's considered by some to be the greatest running back who ever lived. Simpson was the first man to ever rush for more than 2,000 yards in one season, and he did it in just 14 games. But of course, he's largely remembered for that high-profile murder trial for the killings of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. He was found liable for the killings in a civil suit brought by the victims' families.
Carl E. Douglas joins us now. He's a civil rights attorney and was a member of what's known as the Dream Team. Those were the folks defending O.J. Simpson during the murder trial. Carl, I just want to get your reaction to this news of the death of O.J. Simpson, and perhaps you can share with us your experiences with the man.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show this morning. I was surprised, even shocked, when I learned about O.J.'s death this morning. He had a very complicated legacy, and I'm sure that while some will only remember him as someone who was accused of two brutal murders, as you stated, I knew him first as a football star here in Los Angeles when he starred at USC. I knew him second as a National Football League running back, setting mileage records and yardage records for all. And then I knew him third as an icon who was able to go and move from athletics to commercial exploitation, both on a corporate side and in Hollywood. Before Michael Jackson, before Tiger Woods, there was O.J. Simpson running through airports and highways, hawking cereal, cars, and rental-car agencies. I certainly send my condolences out to his 4 children, and it's impossible on this day to not remember that 2 young lives were taken far too soon, and we must always remember that as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Carl. I appreciate also that, as you point out, the different lenses from which people had that touchstone to O.J. Simpson in many ways influenced how they felt about him. I'm wondering, given that you were part of the team that saw him acquitted, that got him that acquittal, to later see him serve time in prison because he was convicted of armed robbery and kidnapping. As people are trying to process even that, I'm curious about how you processed it when that happened.
I was devastated years later when I heard about his arrest in Vegas. But at the same time, I believe the sentence that he received in that case was a payback for the acquittal that we obtained in Los Angeles. The crime that he committed in Vegas was probably a 2-year crime dripping wet. But for that judge to impose a sentence of 9 years, for that 33 years, for that judge to hold the jury so that the verdict would come on the anniversary of the verdict in our case in 1995, says to me that there was some connection, regrettably, and that justice was not served in that matter, at least.
Carl, let's just take a moment for our viewers. Let's keep in mind that while the entire country was transfixed on every moment of that trial, you had millions of viewers. There are some people watching who weren't alive then, and this was before their time. So just for our viewers, I want to reset what was the culmination of that weeks and months-long murder trial. You were part of the team defending O.J. Simpson when the judge came back and the jury returned the verdict. Let's just look back at that for a moment.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187.
Take us back to that moment. Where were you if you were in the room? And did you believe that would be the verdict?
I was sitting inside the well right by the swinging door, right in back of Lee Bailey, who was at the front desk. And let me tell you, I've only cried out of joy two times in my life. Once when my son was born, and second at the O.J. Simpson verdict that day, because that was for us as trial lawyers, the culmination of 16 months of effort, day in, day out, Saturdays, Sundays, evenings, and for a trial lawyer to have success in their effort, vindicating the time and the effort that we 9 lawyers expended away from our families, away from our law practices, was in fact a great victory for trial lawyers everywhere. It's also important to remember that O.J. Simpson happened to have millions of dollars that he was willing to spend on his own defense. And it really raised the specter of how public defender agencies across this nation lacked the resources that O.J. Simpson had, so that we could combat the awesome power of the state by having investigators, expert witnesses on our own side as well. And it takes that level of resource for public defenders nationwide to be able to combat the awesome power of the state. So that case, I think, was a bellwether for that as well.
And Carl, I think that that is an excellent point, because he was the most well-resourced in order to try and afford the dream team and be able to hire the best attorneys and have that time. And other defendants don't have that. But it also, I think, when you're speaking, it also goes to a point that Anne Marie and I were making about truths about the justice system that were revealed through this case, even if it's imperfect, even if you felt like the decision was not the one that you at home would have come to. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit, especially as a Black attorney, being in front of America, as were other members of the Dream Team, trying to defend this Black man who had become a celebrity that was adored by the public, regardless of race. What truths were revealed through the course of this trial that are still being struggled with today?
Your listeners don't understand that era of our country. That was before the internet. Emails were not as widely used as today. That's before Twitter, Facebook, or X, Instagram. So everyone was transfixed on this case and on this trial that was being led by an African-American attorney. What that case did for the image of Black lawyers everywhere was significant, because it reflected the fact that competence comes in all colors. To this day, 30 years later, I am embraced by members of the Black and Brown community because of the work that I did on behalf of O.J. Simpson. For decades, centuries, Black and Brown people have believed that the system did not work for us, that racism was permeating our system and making it impossible for justice ever to be found by Black and Brown defendants. And whatever you think of this verdict, for Black Americans, it was not speaking about O.J. Simpson per se. He didn't speak to the Black community in the ways that other Black icons did. But for the system, for Black lawyers to be successful, for people to believe that at least once in our history, the system acknowledged the excellence of Black lawyering, that was a watershed event for all of the country to observe. And I'm proud to have been a part of that 9-member team.
And Carl, before we let you go, as we speak to you on the news of O.J. Simpson's death at 76 years old, do you feel that in the years after this trial and that controversial verdict, that he ever really repaired his reputation?
It's unfortunate, because the one thing that O.J. always wanted at the conclusion of this case was that he would be able to return to the community that he loved. And regrettably, he did not have that benefit in his life. Although if you were to have asked O.J., he would always remember the fans who beloved him, even after the case. He would always speak and be mindful of those that would ask for autographs or pictures, and he would ignore the other. But it is regrettable that this great athlete, this icon, had his career and his legacy so soiled by the events of 1994 and 1995. And regrettably, it is those events and that trial, I believe, that will remain the primary aspect of his legacy moving forward in history.
Well, as we're talking about his legacy, he was not a perfect man. He was not a perfect vessel for understanding race relations in America. He wasn't a perfect vessel even for understanding the criminal justice system. As you point out, he had more resources than others. And then he was later convicted in a criminal trial for armed robbery. It's a complicated legacy. How do you think he should be remembered?
It is impossible for any fair-minded person to examine the career of O.J. Simpson, one, without acknowledging his tremendously efficient contributions to the sports world, but at the same time, understanding and acknowledging as well that his entire legacy will be soiled by the memory of that trial in 1995, even though he was found not guilty of those charges. It is regrettable, but that will, I'm sure, be the legacy that will always remain.
And Carl, what about for you? Did you face any backlash throughout your career because of the verdict?
I, fortunately, have been uplifted in my career for the last 30 years since the O.J. Simpson trial. I remember quite easily when I first would appear in court after that trial and announce my name and my having worked at the law offices of Johnny L. Cochran Jr. Everyone in the courtroom would stop and listen because that name resonated. I was able to open my own law firm successfully a couple of years after that, and I modeled my practice over the Johnny L. Cochran law firm model. And my success, I am sure, was in some small part a reflection of the successful effort that we had on behalf of O.J. Simpson in 1995. So certainly, I acknowledge and understand that my name will likely always be linked with his until my death.
Well, Carl Douglas, a member of the Dream Team that secured that not guilty verdict for O.J. Simpson. Thanks for joining us on this news of O.J. Simpson's death. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.